All right, good afternoon, everybody. Back again. Since this Manny Pacquiao win over Keith Thurman, a lot of people are talking about making videos about Manny Pacquiao being the best fighter of all time. But, the question I have is it's really hard to compare a fighter from one era to another era. My thing is this, fighters should just try to be the best fighters of their era. That's all they can really do. They can only fight the guys in their era. So my question is pretty simple because you have Manny Pacquiao, who was the fighter of the decade in the 2000s, and you have Floyd Mayweather, who a lot of people think was the best fighter of his era, and a good amount of people think Manny Pacquiao was right up there alongside him as maybe the best fighter of his era as well. Since Floyd Mayweather retired, Manny Pacquiao was pound for pound in his absence for a long time. And again, like I said, he was fighter of the decade. So you could argue the two best fighters of our era were probably Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. So and instead of comparing Manny Pacquiao to fighters of other eras, let's take a look and compare him to his compatriot, Floyd Mayweather. Okay, because these guys are linked. They're going to be forever linked. I know what Floyd posted, I think today or yesterday or today on his Instagram about clout chasing this and that. Forget about that because you guys are always going to be linked together no matter what. Whenever someone talks about Manny Pacquiao, your name's going to come up, and whenever someone talks about you, Manny Pacquiao's name's going to come up. You guys are just linked forever. You guys have the record by far for the highest grossing fight in boxing, and your fight was probably the most highly anticipated fight in all of combat sports. So take that with a grain of salt for what it's worth because that's just the way it is. So, in other words, instead of trying to compare eras, let's compare these two. Let's see, who would you guys say is the more accomplished fighter? Now, Floyd Mayweather retired undefeated, broke Rocky Marciano's record. Now, there's a Thailand boxer out there. His last name is Mathiathan. I think it's one Hung Maniathan, I think, or let me see if I can pronounce his name. So I have a hard time pronouncing this guy's name. Um, see if I can pull him up real quick. Wan Heng Maniathan is his name. I'm sorry for you Maniathan fans. But this guy is 53-0 right now. He's basically a strawweight boxer. He's not retired yet, but he could break Floyd Mayweather's record if he does retire undefeated because he's 53-0 right now. We'll see what happens. I think Mayweather's retired at 50, and a lot of people dispute the McGregor fight. They should think it shouldn't have been sanctioned. Whatever the case may be, it was sanctioned. It went down as an official bout. So Mayweather broke Rocky Marciano's record. It is what it is. Now, both guys are really highly accomplished, but let's look at some things that Manny Pacquiao has done that no one else has done, and then let's look at some things that Floyd Mayweather has done that no one else has done. So basically, the only accomplishment that Floyd Mayweather has over Manny Pacquiao is the fact that he retired undefeated. That's the one thing that Floyd Mayweather has done that no one else has done. And obviously, if you want to count all the money he's made, I don't think anyone's going to ever make as much money as Floyd Mayweather. But Manny Pacquiao is number two on that list. So I don't know if you want to count that as an accomplishment in terms of boxing, but maybe you can. So let's just throw two out there. So let's look at some of the things that Manny Pacquiao has accomplished. Manny Pacquiao has won world titles in 8 different weight classes, something that no one else has ever done. Okay, he was basically a flyweight and moved all the way up to junior middleweight. So that's incredible in itself. Okay, Manny Pacquiao also now is officially the oldest welterweight champion in the history of the sport. And at 40 years old, he fought a guy who was favored over him at first, and then it became, a 50-50 fight. So how many people in their 40s, when their careers are winding down, take on guys, who they're an underdog against or they're 50-50 with? So that in itself, when Mayweather was, at the tail end of his career, he could have fought Keith Thurman. He could have fought some of the other top welterweights out there. And then, after he beat De La Hoya, he had Cotto out there. He had Margarito out there. There was Paul Williams out there. There was Josh Clottey out there. At the time, it was Shane Mosley, and he ended up fighting him later. But he ended up fighting Cotto later. But, all these fights, when they were hot, never happened. They never happened. And you can argue that as fighters get older, they become more selective with their opponents. But Manny Pacquiao took on a guy who was 10 years younger than him, basically, who was thought to be the man in the welterweight division no less than a year and a half ago before he had his layoff. And also, he took the guy on, and he won a major title at the age of 40 at welterweight. Now you can look at guys like Hopkins, and you can look at what George Foreman did. And what Hopkins did, I think, is totally underrated. I mean, Hopkins being a champion at like 49, 50 years old is incredible. Is incredible. But again, Hopkins started his career at middleweight and ended up at light heavyweight. And these guys that are in bigger weight classes, they can make weight easier. Like Manny Pacquiao has been a welterweight for like a long time. Manny Pacquiao's been a welterweight for like 10 years, maybe 11 years. He's been a welterweight for 11 years. Okay. So being 40 years old and making 147 for 11 years, that's hard. It's harder to, for an older fighter at a lower weight class to be successful than it is an older fighter in a higher weight class. Because like what George Foreman did was incredible. What Bernard Hopkins did is incredible. Like I said, what Bernard Hopkins did is totally underrated. I don't think he gets enough credit for what he did. Being able to be fighting till you're 50 and still being a top 5 guy at 50 in your division is incredible. But when you compare what Manny Pacquiao's done, his accomplishments, the 8 divisions, the oldest, welterweight champion in history. Floyd Mayweather again was very selective with his opponents as he got older. Manny Pacquiao is still taking on top young guys in their prime who are, tough guys in the division. So the argument can be made that Manny Pacquiao's accomplishments, even though I don't think he's a better fighter than Floyd Mayweather, his accomplishments could be considered greater than Floyd Mayweather's. Because some of the things that he has done, I don't think will ever be broken. Records like that, statistics and records that he's done, I don't think will ever be broken. I don't think we'll ever see a guy start at flyweight and go all the way up to junior middleweight. That's crazy. Okay, I don't think we'll ever see a 40-year-old at welterweight win a major world title. I don't think that I could be wrong, but I don't think that's going to happen again. Floyd Mayweather's got the titles in 5 different weight classes. A lot of fighters have done that. De La Hoya, Leonard, Pacquiao, Tommy Hearns. There's a lot of fighters that have done that in the history of the sport, but no one's. Manny Pacquiao's the only one to do it in 8 divisions, which is incredible. 8 divisions. Okay, so Mayweather retired, 50-0. That's a great accomplishment. But outside of that, I think Manny Pacquiao's career, I think he will be thought of as having greater accomplishments than Floyd Mayweather. Even Max Kellerman had talked about what Manny Pacquiao has accomplished, and he said pound for pound that he thinks he's a better fighter than Floyd Mayweather if you just go off pound for pound. I'm not a pound for pound guy. Like I said, I'm not a guy who compares fighters from era to era. I don't like doing that because it's just so subjective. But even this topic right now is subjective, but if you look at the accomplishments alone, you could argue that Manny Pacquiao has probably one of the most impressive careers of all time. Definitely, I would say the most impressive career in my time, in our era, the things he's accomplished. And, he's worldwide. I think he's really, really popular. He's loved by everybody. This guy is just a great ambassador for the sport. Now, no disrespect to Floyd Mayweather, um, he's not really loved. He's got a lot of people who don't like him. I mean, I respect his boxing ability. I think he's a great fighter, and arguably he's one of the best fighters of all time. And I think he's probably the best fighter in our era. But I don't think he's the most accomplished fighter in our era. And it's crazy because there were talks about him fighting Sergio Martinez at middleweight, and back when Sergio Martinez was the champion, and I interviewed Floyd Mayweather Sr. and I talked to him about that fight way back when I was on another podcast, and I said, this would be a great time to fight Sergio Martinez. His legs aren't the same. His legs are kind of gone right now. I said, you could have had that fight before Cotto. I said, this is when Cotto had signed to fight Martinez, and there was talks about Floyd fighting Martinez. But I think at that time, I think Floyd would have beaten Martinez, and that would have really, really given his resume and his career a huge, huge boost. Being able to be the middleweight champion as well, being a six-time world champion, that would have been incredible. I'm not even sure if a guy coming up from 130 ever won a title at 160. That would be a great accomplishment. I know Vinny Pacquiao went from 135 to 154. Him and Duran, like, I think, are the only three, like him and Duran, and I think it's Pacquiao and Mayweather and De La Hoya and Whitaker have that, that stat. So there's like about 4 or 5 fighters that have that statistic, but I don't think anyone's went from 130 to 160. So, we saw what Cotto was able to do to Martinez. And imagine if that was Floyd in there instead of Cotto, because if Cotto could have done that, I think Floyd could have done that too. So there was missed opportunities for Floyd, I think. As great as his career was, because he was so selective at times, in who he wanted to fight. Now, granted, it paid off for him monetarily, but I think it hurt him legacy-wise. Now, he does have a great legacy, but you have to say to yourself, could it have been even better? Because Manny Pacquiao has really never been accused of avoiding anybody. He fought. That's why he has 7 losses, because he wasn't afraid to fight anybody. He always fought the best possible opponents that he could fight for the most part. He really never avoided anybody, to be perfectly honest with you. And he always gave us the fights that we wanted for the most part. Whereas Floyd, gave us some of the fights we wanted, but not when we wanted them. We always had to wait for fights with Floyd. And we always found ourselves asking, well, what if this fight happened 5 years later, like with Shane Mosley? What if that fight happened 5 years earlier? What if that fight with Cotto happened 5 years earlier? What if that fight with Pacquiao happened 5 years earlier? Like, we find ourselves saying that a lot with Floyd. And we really never said that too much about Pacquiao. We got, Pacquiao fought Marquez, he fought Bradley, fought Morales, fought Barrera. He fought them guys when he was supposed to fight those guys, when those guys were in their prime. Now, Floyd, early in his career, yeah. But after he had that tough fight with Castillo, I think something changed in him. And that's when he started saying to himself, I gotta be careful here. That was his first taste of, possibly potential defeat. And he didn't like how that felt. So then he started becoming, I think a little selective with his opponents after that fight. And I actually thought he lost that fight. And some people think he lost the Maidana fight too. But I had him winning the Maidana fight, the first one, but it was close. So Floyd's had some close calls in his career, no doubt. So you have to ask yourself these questions. I mean, like, I'm going to be honest with you. I think Manny Pacquiao has a more accomplished career than Floyd Mayweather, even though I don't think he's a better fighter. I don't think he's a more skilled fighter than Floyd Mayweather, but I think he's a more accomplished fighter. And I think in history, I think people will look at his legacy in a better light than they do Floyd Mayweather's. Whether that's fair or not, Floyd Mayweather will always have question marks in his career, whether that's fair or not. Some things that are said about him aren't really fair because the Mosley situation, he did try to fight Mosley early in his career. Mosley was the one that said he had a toothache, so we got to give him a pass on that one. Um, Also, the thing with Canelo being green, I just never agreed with that. Canelo was a pro for 8 years. He had 44 fights under his belt, and he was a world champion who made 10 successful title defenses of the junior middleweight title. And people are calling this 24-year-old guy, young man, with 10 title defenses, 44 fights under his belt, 8 years of professional experience. This guy's green, fighting a guy that's close to 37 years old, who's not in his prime, who's a lot smaller than him. And, in that instance, Floyd doesn't get credit for that fight. And that, to me, that's probably Floyd's most impressive performance. Fighting a guy when he's not in his prime and fighting a younger guy who's probably not hasn't peaked, but he's closer to his prime than Floyd was, much closer to his prime than Floyd was. And this guy was bigger, younger, stronger than Floyd. And he got dominated. And Floyd was actually walking him down. So to me, seeing the little man like Floyd, the smaller man, the little man walk the bigger man down in that fight, to me, that was, you know, really impressive to me. That's just my opinion. So no, I'm not making a distinction. I thought I was very clear on that, Omar Rodriguez. I said it about 15 times that I don't think he's a better fighter. I think he's just more accomplished. Like Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield. I think Lennox Lewis is a better fighter than Evander Holyfield. Like I just think he's, because of his size and his skill combined, I think he's a better fighter than Evander Holyfield. But I think Evander Holyfield is a more accomplished fighter. I mean, he won the world title heavyweight title 4 times. He's the only fighter in history to do that. And another thing that Evander Holyfield was able to do that no other fighter, he was the only undisputed world champion in 2 weight classes. And this is when the WBO really wasn't considered a major world title. It was kind of a fringe belt. And he won all 3 belts in 2 weight divisions, something that no other fighter has done. He was unified in 2 weight classes. So he's a more accomplished fighter than Lennox Lewis, but I think Lennox Lewis is a better boxer all around. So you can be a better fighter than someone, but not have as much accomplishments. And you can look at Evander Holyfield's resume too. He fought Riddick Bowe, Michael Moore, George Foreman, Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis. He fought everybody. Now Lennox Lewis, he even fought Johnny Ruiz, a guy that Lennox Lewis was ordered to fight. He didn't even fight him. Not that he wouldn't have beat him, but he's just saying he fought fights that Lennox Lewis didn't fight, like Riddick Bowe, Johnny Ruiz, Michael Moore, George Foreman. Like this guy literally fought every conceivable opponent at heavyweight that he could fight. You can go down the list. There's not one top 5 guy this man has not fought in his career. So in terms of accomplishments, Evander Holyfield has done more than Lennox Lewis. But Lennox Lewis, I think, is just a better fighter. He beat him. Thought he beat him twice. So that's just my opinion on it. I mean, I'm curious to see everyone else's opinion on that, because I think this is a good topic. And the whole thing about, like I said, trying to say who's the best of all time, it's just so hard to determine that. Like, it's just so subjective, because back in the old days, people say, oh, well, they did this, they did that, they fought 10 times a year, they fought 15-round fight. Okay, but you know what else they did? After they became champion, they would fight non-title fights, 8, 10-rounders, okay? And they wouldn't fight top-level guys. They did what Julio Cesar Chavez did. Chavez would have a big fight over in the United States. He would defend his title, and then he would go back to Mexico and fight a lower level guy, in some small, arena in Mexico, that in a fight that no one really knew about, no one paid attention about. These guys fought a lot because they didn't fight the iron top guy after top guy after top guy. They had a lot of interim, in between stay busy fights, and they had to do that because they weren't getting paid what fighters are getting paid today. So you have to take that in context. If these guys were making what fighters were making today, then they wouldn't have to fight all those times. Like Muhammad Ali fought twice a year. George Foreman fought twice a year. Sugar Ray Leonard fought twice a year. So you want to go back, like how far back do you want to go? Like as time went on, the sport has evolved. And fighters are able to fight longer now because they don't fight as often. And plus we have better training methods. Fighters don't kill themselves in training. They don't run 6 days a week, 6-7 miles a day like they did back then. They're eating better now. They have better supplements. And quite frankly, they're probably taking better drugs. So it's like it's so hard to compare these eras. You got a guy 6'5" in Lennox Lewis who's fast and athletic, and you put him up against a guy like Rocky Marciano. You think Rocky Marciano would stand a chance against Lennox Lewis? I don't. And I'm going to say something very controversial. You got a guy 6'9" in Tyson Fury who can move and do what he does. If you put him in there with a guy like Ali, I'm sorry, he beats Ali. I think he beats Ali. That's going to sound blasphemous to some people, but I think Tyson Fury beats Muhammad Ali. Just like I thought Muhammad Ali would beat Joe Louis, because Joe Louis was like a friggin' 190 pounds, 197, 95 pounds. Rocky Marciano was like 187. Like fighters, as time goes on, athletes get bigger, better, faster, and stronger. It's evolution. Now, is that applicable in all cases? Like, do I think that Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns couldn't beat Floyd Mayweather? I would pick Tommy Hearns and Sugar Ray Leonard over Floyd Mayweather if they fought, but I think Floyd Mayweather would have a shot style-wise better against Sugar Ray Leonard. I think he could win against Sugar Ray Leonard. I think style-wise he'd have a harder time beating a guy like Tommy Hearns because styles make fights. It wouldn't be impossible for him to beat Leonard, but I would pick Leonard over Mayweather. I would pick Hearns over Mayweather. Duran, I think Mayweather would beat Duran. Whitaker and Mayweather in their primes, I'd probably pick Whitaker. So there are exceptions to the rule, but again, you're going back from back to the 80s, mid 80s, early 90s. That's different. But when you want to go back from the 2000s into the 50s and 60s, it's just so hard to compare those guys with these guys because we're so much more advanced now with just sports medicine, sports science, nutrition, everything. Like it's hard to just compare those two eras for me. I mean, and this is just my opinion. I know you have those nostalgia guys out there who think Sugar Ray Robinson is the best fighter of all time. It's like, I mean, you guys never saw the guy fight. How do you know? I mean, he lost to a lot of guys that he wasn't supposed to lose to. He lost to Jake LaMotta, lost to Carmen Basilia, lost to Gene Fulmer, lost to Randy Turpin. And again, I'm going to say something that people aren't going to like. Teddy Atlas likes to use the word quit a lot, saying, the sport's mental, and if, you have to be mentally strong and whatever. But, Sugar Ray Robinson fought a guy, Joey Maxim. He was beating him the whole fight. Then in the 13th round, he could not continue because of heat exhaustion. He only had 2 rounds left. Now, does Teddy Atlas ever say anything about Sugar Ray Robinson not continuing, not having fighters not behaving like a fighter? No, Teddy Atlas will say Sugar Ray Robinson is the best fighter of all time, but he'll never talk about that. So again, you have these people who are biased towards their era, who will overlook certain things that they criticize today's fighters about that even fighters back then did. Okay, Muhammad Ali lost to Leon Spinks, who only had 7 pro fights. Why? Because Muhammad Ali didn't like to train. He was out of shape in a lot of fights. But Teddy Atlas will sit there and criticize today's fighters about how, you know, they don't have the mentality that the old time fighters had. They're not hungry like the old time fighters were. But again, you take the old fighters and you put them in today's environment, in today's atmosphere, with the way the sport is today, where these guys can get paid a lot of money for not fighting the toughest guys out there. What would these guys do? You got a guy like Sugar Ray Robinson who himself had said he really didn't like boxing. He didn't like it. He did it because he was good at it. Really didn't like it. So again, does Teddy Atlas tell you these things? Because Teddy Atlas is a big nostalgia guy. He loves to talk about how the old fighters were so much better than today's fighters, but he'll never tell you the whole story. He'll tell you his biased version of it, with all due respect to him, because we're all biased towards certain things. You may be biased towards certain eras, certain fighters, whatever. Sugar Ray Leonard's my favorite fighter of all time. My favorite fighter of all time, but I can critique the guy honestly. I thought he lost the rematch to Tommy Hearns. And I thought when he fought Donnie Lalonde for 2 world titles on the same night and made Donnie Lalonde fight at 168, and at 168 had to put his 175-pound title on the line, basically fighting at junior middleweight and forcing this guy to put his 175-pound title on the line, or you wouldn't fight him. Of course, Donnie Lalonde's going to fight you because it was $10 million back in 1988 or 89. It was, excuse me, $10 million in 89. How much is that worth today? That's like 20 million today. So you think the guy's going to turn down that? You basically drained the guy and made him come down. He's a 175 pounder, okay? And you made him drain himself to 168, and you won his light heavyweight title when he fought at 168. I love Sugar Ray Leonard to death, favorite fighter of all time. But what he did to Donnie Lalonde on that night was bullshit. It was a cheap way to win 2 world titles in one night. That was not a true light heavyweight fight. It was a super middleweight fight. And Sugar Ray Leonard only weighed 162 pounds. He had no business fighting Donnie Lalonde for the light heavyweight title. When he at his heaviest was 162 pounds. Just wasn't a big guy. So we got to be honest. We got to, even though we are biased, we like certain fighters. Same thing with Tyson Fury. Love Tyson Fury to death. Right now, he's currently my favorite fighter in boxing. I think he's the best heavyweight in the world. But he's not the lineal champion in my eyes because he retired. And if he didn't retire, he was going to get stripped. So even though we like certain fighters, we like certain eras, we're biased. We have to try to be objective about certain things, because you know why? Because then, if we're not objective, we're going to be found, accused of. We're going to find ourselves in situations where we're applying double standards, because we're going to give certain fighters a pass for doing certain things that we like, but the fighters that we're not so crazy about, we're going to critique them differently, and that's going to hurt you. Hurt your credibility as a boxing fan. How people look at you as a boxing fan. If you're on here trying to be an analyst, or you're doing a radio show, whatever you're doing. If you're going to apply double standards because you like certain fighters more than other fighters, then you're going to lose credibility because of that. So that's the way I look at it, man. That's just the way I look at it. So, and Burgess Meredith made another great point in here too. He was 16 years old, Manny Pacquiao, fighting grown men when he turned pro, which is incredible. So that's another thing. So when you really look at these two guys, it's going to be debatable. I mean, I think Floyd Mayweather is a better fighter. I think Floyd Mayweather is probably the best fighter in my era. But I will concede the point that Manny Pacquiao is the more and the most accomplished fighter of my era in terms of accomplishments and accolades and what he's done. So in that regard, I'm going to give the nod to Manny Pacquiao in that area. But I will still concede the point that Floyd Mayweather is the best fighter in my era. So that's all I got, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Burgess Meredith said B. Roy Jones, light middle, the heavyweight, more than Manny. Okay, Burgess, but once again, Roy Jones never won a title at 154 pounds. Okay, he didn't fight very. He fought very briefly at 154. Okay, so it's not the same thing. So you got junior middleweight, middleweight, super middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight. That's 5 divisions. It's still not 8 divisions. It's still not 8 divisions. So it's just not the same thing. Again, Roy was the fighter of the '90s. That's I mean, but when you want to look at my era starts, I actually start. I'm talking about the modern era. So when I talk about the modern era, technically, I think eras are they're generally 20 years long. If you want to think about it. Okay, they're 4 and 7 pounds apart, but when you look at the lighter weight classes, and you say, oh, these guys are only the divisions are only separated by 3 or 4 pounds, whatever. But again, when you look at a guy that's 112 pounds, and you look at the percentage of 3 pounds of what it is of his body weight, 3 pounds or 2 pounds to a guy that's 105 is like 5 or 7 pounds to a guy that's like 175 or 168 pounds. It's basically all relative to the percentage of the guy's weight. The smaller the guy's weight is, the less pounds are going to be. The less pounds are going to equal the same percentage of a bigger guy's weight. So it's really hard to compare it like that. People want to say, oh, flyweight is only, super flyweight's only 3 pounds heavier, but the guy. So what percentage is 3 pounds of a 112-pound guy's weight? Think about it. So it's all relative to the size of the fighter. Well, again, like I said, this is subjective, Benji. I mean, if you think that that's more impressive what Manny Pacquiao has done, that's fine. But a lot of people would probably disagree with you. You know, a lot of people would disagree with you. So Roy Jones, when he was 35, his career was pretty much over. Manny Pacquiao's 40, he's still going strong. So you tell me what's more impressive. Now, this is not to diminish anything Roy Jones has done, but if you want to argue who did more, I think it's a tough argument to say that Roy Jones did more than Manny Pacquiao in his career. Lower weight classes, I mean, the same thing, man. They're smaller guys, so there's going to be smaller gaps. Like the 3 pounds again is the same as 7 pounds to a guy who's 168 pounds. It's the same thing percentage wise. Do the math. Take a guy who's 105 pounds. Okay. Let's divide 3 by 105. 3 divided by 1. Wait a minute. 3 divided by 105. 1, 2. That's like 3%. 3 pounds is like 3% of the guy's body weight. So let's do 7 divided by 168. That's about 4%. So it's like a 1% difference. So it's all comparable. It's all relative. Look at the percentage of the guy's body weight when he moves up. What percentage of his body weight is that increase in poundage. It all works out to be pretty much close to the same. So that's the misconception about the 2 to 3 pound thing. When people say, "Oh, you guys are only moving up 3 pounds," yeah, but he's 105 pounds. It's 112 pounds. Not the same thing. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. Yeah, these discussions are kind of fun. I mean, there's no wrong or right answers to this. I mean, I'm not saying that my opinion's better than your opinion. By no means. And I welcome other people's input on this. I have no problem with someone saying that they think Roy Jones was the best fighter. I mean, he was the fighter of the '90s. So for 10 years, I mean, he had boxing on lockdown. It was he was the man for 10 years. So we can't argue that. Yeah, that is a good point, Burgess, because the jump from light heavyweight to heavyweight is big. That's like 20 something. That's like 20 pounds because you have to be over 200 pounds. So it's like 201 pounds. Track 175. Moved up. He had a 26-pound difference. So that's a good point. That's a good point. He had a much bigger jump up. But again, James Toney moved up to heavyweight from light heavyweight. So there's other guys that did it. Antonio Tarver moved up to heavyweight. Tony Bellew went from light heavyweight to heavyweight. Okay, a lot of guys. There's been some guys that have done it. But nobody has fought in 8 weight classes. Not 8. Not 8. So there's been other guys that have done it. Okay, but no one's done what Manny's done. But it is impressive. It is impressive. Definitely is impressive. This is a great discussion. It's a fun discussion. And there's no right or wrong answers to this. Trust me. I can't see myself giving a guy who's 7 losses the more accomplished fighter. Check mark. No, L's really don't matter. They don't. That's the misconception because that's the problem with the sport of boxing. When a guy loses, everybody thinks that that's like the end of his career. It doesn't matter that he lost 7 times. He put him, because he fought the best. Just because a guy's undefeated doesn't always mean he fought the best competition. Again, you can argue that Manny Pacquiao always fought tough fights and fought fighters in their prime. He never fought fighters when they were past their prime. He fought his last 2 fights were against top level fighters that were 10 and 12 years younger than him. Okay? Yeah, but Sugar Ray Robinson lost 19 times. Muhammad Ali lost 5 times. Sugar Ray Leonard lost 3 times. Tommy Hearns lost 8 times. Evander Holyfield lost multiple times. Lennox Lewis lost a couple times. A loss does not define a fighter. Does not take away from his greatness. It just doesn't. If you test yourself, you're going to take L's. Manny Pacquiao has 7 losses because no one's ever accused him of not fighting the best when he should have fought the best. No one's ever said, "Oh, Manny Pacquiao waited for this guy to be out of his prime," or this fight. When Manny Pacquiao fought someone, no one ever said this fight should have happened 5 years earlier. No one ever said that. No one ever said that. And then again, what about some of the fights that he's been in? A lot of people think he won the Jeff Horn fight. A lot of people think he won the Bradley fight. one guy's fighting exactly with Larry Merchant, if one guy's fighting better opposition, and the other when it suits him, that's a great point. No, if you do test yourself, everyone loses. Just because you're undefeated, it doesn't mean, like, again, Sugar Ray Robinson has 19 losses. There's not many people who say that Floyd Mayweather is a better fighter than Sugar Ray Robinson. I'm not saying you can't make an argument, but the perception is Floyd is not the best fighter of all time. He's not even in a lot of people's top 20. There's a lot of fighters that have losses than him, have more losses than him, that people think are better than him. You have to ask yourself if what would Mayweather's career be like if he fought everyone when he was supposed to fight them? That's a good point. It's not like Pacquiao lost to bad fighters. You know, Muhammad Ali is considered by many the greatest heavyweight of all time. He's got 5 losses. Exactly, Dwayne. I agree. Doesn't yeah. Again, I mean, he still lost. He still had 19 losses though, Reese. 19 losses. It is what it is. He had 19 losses. So you gotta look at it for what it is. I already mentioned certain fights that he wanted, like Cotto. He wanted a Cotto fight and he wanted a Mosley fight, but he couldn't get those fights because Arum wouldn't make the Cotto fight, and Mosley wouldn't take the fight. So yeah, I mean, there's 2 instances. Yeah, I'll agree with that, Eric. I'll agree with that. Is Ali overrated? I'm going to be honest with you, and again, this is just me. I think a lot of heavyweights today would beat Ali. I don't think that doesn't mean he wasn't a great fighter, but again, Muhammad Ali couldn't fight inside. Didn't throw body shots. Didn't really have a good left hook. He was a 1-2 fighter. I mean, he was good at what he was able to do, but there was a lot of things that he wasn't good at that fighters could exploit. He had fits with guys like Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, because he had a hard time dealing with guys who fought inside. And the refs gave him a lot of leeway. He used to grab guys by the head, pull down on their heads. And you have to ask yourself, would Ali be allowed to do back then, today, what he did? With all that holding and pulling down on the head without getting points or possibly being disqualified today. We've seen fighters get disqualified and get points taken away for less than what Ali has done. So, do I think Ali beats Lennox Lewis? No. Do I think he beats Tyson Fury? No. Just don't. I just don't. Yeah, Frazier gave him fits. Frazier gave him fits. Frazier gave him fits. I know it's blasphemous to criticize the fighters of yesteryear, but I, I'm I'll be 50 in December, so I've watched a lot of boxing, and I watched some of Ali's fights, even though I was very young. I watched some of Ali's fights live. I watched Larry Holmes. I watched some of the later fights of Muhammad Ali. I was born in '69. So I remember some of the older fights, in the late 70s. Even though I was young, I still remember them. And obviously I went back and watched them, but some of them I did watch live. You got to understand something, guys. I'm not trying to be a boxing snob here, but I'm like I said, I'm going to be 50 December 9th in less than fucking 5 months. Okay, so I've been alive a half a century. So you gotta understand. I started watching boxing when I was like 8, 9 years old. About 9 years old, I started watching boxing. Now, obviously, I didn't know at 9 years old what I know now. But again, I watched it with my father when I was 9 years old. I remember watching it like on that big wooden TV in my big wooden box of a TV in my living room. I remember watching it. So I've seen a lot of boxing. And that's why when people, criticize fighters, oh, this guy would never do that. Again, I've seen it. It's like, yes, they would. Like, there's so much double standards. Like, no fighter's perfect. Everyone has, blemishes. Like a lot of times, you can go back on any fighter's career, and someone will say, well, this guy should have fought that guy. This guy avoided this guy. It's like no fighter has a pristine record really. The one guy I could say, the two guys in my lifetime that I think fought everybody. There's two fighters in the history of my lifetime, from my vantage point, in my opinion, that ducked nobody. And that's Muhammad Ali, and that's Evander Holyfield. And you could make an argument Manny Pacquiao as well. They fought everybody. But Muhammad Ali and friggin' Evander Holyfield, they fought every conceivable opponent they could find. You can't go down their career and say, well, this guy, he didn't fight this guy. He didn't fight that guy. They fought everybody. Evander Holyfield fought every top heavyweight. You could say Lennox Lewis never fought George Foreman. He never fought Michael Moore. Okay? But you can't say that about Holyfield. Holyfield and Lennox Lewis never fought Riddick Bowe, whether it was his fault or not. Holyfield fought all those guys. Riddick Bowe, Mike Tyson twice. Okay? Riddick Bowe 3 times. Okay? He gave Riddick Bowe a rematch after he beat him. He didn't have to do that. Fought Michael Moore twice. Fought Lennox Lewis twice. Like, this guy's got a sick resume. Crazy resume. In my opinion, probably has the best resume in the sport of, like, the history of boxing, probably, arguably. Because even when he got older, he was fighting tough guys. This guy has a sick resume of Evander Holyfield. I have so much respect for Evander Holyfield as a fighter. This guy was a true fucking gladiator, Evander Holyfield. Honestly. True fucking gladiator. Yep. Yeah, a lot of people say that, Omar, that the 130, 140 pound Floyd is not the same as the 147, 155. That's a good point. That's a good point. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I got to take care of some things that I got on the schedule today. I will be back for a live cast on Saturday night. I'm going to be doing the Maurice Hooker, Jose Ramirez live fight commentary this Saturday night. So make sure you join me then. And always make sure you check us out, the Ringside Reporter podcast, every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, live. All right, guys, until next time, Beeb is out. I will talk to you all soon. Have a great day and take care. And leave your comments in the comment section. And tell me who you think is the more accomplished fighter. Tell me who your favorite fighter is of all time. I'm curious to know. Thank you, Omar. Thank you, everybody. And kick in with some super chats here, guys. I mean, I'm trying to get some new equipment. I got the mixer set up. I'm going to have Skype up and running very shortly. I'm going to be getting some new audio equipment to make the sound better, to get some noise cancellation on this mic so you don't hear my furniture banging around all the time when I move, because this mixer seems to be picking up everything. Kick in with some super chats if you can. Every bit of money that you guys give us goes right back into the show. And it gives us the equipment, and it helps us pay our bills, and makes us able to make the show better for you guys as listeners. All right, guys, until next time, talk to you all soon. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and I will talk to you later. Enjoy.